great pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady for Birmingham Edgbaston. It's also an honour and a pleasure to be able to rise after 14 years as a free man, free to speak on the opposition benches, liberated from the tyranny of the whip's handout that we're hearing beautifully read from the benches opposite, or the tyranny of desperate ambition to get onto the front bench. No, I want to speak today with the reflection of 14 years on and off the front bench about the state of the public finances, much more in sorrow than in anger, not to score party political points, but to share reflections on the real depth of the crisis this country faces in our structural deficits and the challenge this Chancellor, this country, this Parliament faces in tackling it. And I should just say, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a former Minister for Life Science, for fusion, for quantum, for space, now delighted to have been elected by, I think, the House to the Select Committee for Science, Technology and Innovation, and Chair of the Science in Parliament all-party group, the oldest all-party group, and Chair of the Agricultural Science and Technology Committee. And I'm proudly and gladly pleased to declare my register of interest. I am trying to repair my finances. I carry too much debt, like this country, by working with some great British companies to try and help them raise money in international markets and to grow. It's what this country has to do to get itself out of debt as well. And I wanted to really say three things, if I may, this afternoon. Something about this, the real nature of the crisis in our public finances, something about why I so deeply believe the innovation economy is the only way to get us out of this doom loop spiral of structural deficit and debt, and thirdly, something about my poor constituents in Mid Norfolk and the effect of this budget on them. Tempting though it is to stand up and accuse everything, all the ills of the world on the party opposite, and to take no responsibility, I want to do the opposite and suggest that actually this Parliament, this country, for the last 25 years, has been failing to grapple seriously enough with the deep nature of structural deficit in our broken public finances. I remember when newly elected in 2010, having a brilliant briefing from the from the IFS, from Robert Choate and Paul Johnson, and having the structural deficit properly explained to me. And I think it's stayed with me, and it's worth sharing for the benefit of those listening to this debate. Traditionally, all governments in this country tax and spend. They earn each money every year from tax revenues and then spend it. In some years, the economic cycle turns down, so we don't cut spending. We borrow a bit to maintain our spending and then repay that off when the economic cycle turns. Occasionally, in the cycle, we run deficits. The structural deficit is that bit of the public finances which means that even when the economy is growing, even when it's growing at 2–3%, we're running a deficit. We're running a deficit because there are bits of the economy that are constantly swallowing more money than we are capable of earning. And when we took office in 2010, remember, debt interest was the fourth biggest department of state. We had a serious crisis on our hands. And I think the truth, if we're honest to go back, is that in the cool Britannia years of New Labour back under Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, we didn't pay enough attention to reforming deeply the nature of our public finances. In the 2007-8 crash, that government unleashed £700 billion of borrowing, QE. We could argue now about whether that was the right thing to do, but it drove huge asset price inflation, left us with huge debts. The coalition tried to get us out of that debt with austerity that I think the country was with us for the first 2 or 3 years and then felt we'd overdone. Despite all of that, yes, of course, we've had that crash, we've had the disruption of Brexit, we've had a terrible once-in-a-100-year pandemic, we've had a war in Ukraine, yes, all of that. 700 billion of QE, 400 billion pandemic relief, 40 billion cost of living relief. But we've come back to the same place we were in 2010, effectively, which is a structural deficit, flashing red lights in the public finances. I call it the bonfire in the basement of the British economy. Even when it's growing, even when you can see that skyscraper as you drive from Norfolk and you see Canary Wharf, even when that economy gets bigger, deep down invisibly in the basement there's a bonfire. It's eating away at the resilience and the sustainability of that economy. It should worry us all. It should worry all of us involved in public policy. And I have a sneaking feeling that the public do understand. And on my doorsteps in the election, they're not economists, they're not seasoned political observers, but the sheer common sense of observing successive governments fail tells them that there is a deep problem in the state. And I want to suggest that a lot of the political volatility of the last few years comes from an inability, yes, in my party, to tackle honestly and to be honest about the scale of those. I happen to think the Brexit revolution was driven as much by deep, deep anger and resentment in this country, not just at Brussels, but at the failure of political economy in this country. People feeling outside of the golden triangle, left behind by their own government, their own country, their own model of growth. So, to go back to that lecture in 2010 that Robert Choate and Paul Johnson gave me, because it's just as relevant today. What drives the structural deficit? 4 things. One was debt interest. We've been lucky and kind. The markets, there was an inflation surge because of Ukraine, but the markets have generally not punished us for borrowing too much. Welfare bills. The coalition put in place very painful reforms to stop the rise of the welfare bill. We didn't cut the welfare budget, we just stopped the rise of it. Thirdly, public sector pensions, some very painful reforms. Again, not to cut the cost, but to stop the cost of public sector pensions booming and bankrupting the public finances. All significant. But the big one, far bigger than the others, is healthcare. And the structural cost of healthcare in our economy, an ageing economy, more and more expensive medicines, an NHS that was designed for the 1940s, not for the 21st century, is bankrupting itself and in danger of bankrupting the public finances. And I am on record, and I'll repeat it, in saying what a breath of fresh air I think in that respect the Health Secretary is in being able to confront honestly. The NHS isn't broken by lack of Tory funding. We've all been pouring money into the NHS. The problem is the model is not fit for the 21st century world in which we live. So much more in sorrow than in anger, I want to suggest that we need to start this debate by being profoundly honest about what the real nature of this problem is. And the truth, you cannot cut, borrow, tax or spend your way out of a debt crisis. And successive governments have tried and failed. And I came here today genuinely as a card-carrying supporter of industrial strategy and a supporter of increasing spending on R&D and getting this country out of this spiral into a higher growth model, wanting to cheer on much of this budget. And maybe tomorrow when we read the Red Book, there'll be more to cheer in it. But at this point this afternoon, I'm worried and for some concerns that I will share with the House. I'll happily give way to my friend.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the honourable member and my fellow Science and Select Committee member for giving way. And he knows that the R&D funding is vital to drive the innovation, the productivity and future growth and prosperity. So would he agree with me in that we should welcome the commitment to protecting the core R&D funding, as well as the specific investments in high-tech areas like automotive, aerospace and clean energy, and that we should also look forward to looking at examining the detail of the budget to see the impact on science and technology in every department and across the country?
Yes, I'm grateful for that intervention and for her chairmanship of our Select Committee. Yes, indeed, I do welcome bits of the budget. I welcome that 20 billion commitment. That was a figure that I and our former Prime Minister, then Chancellor, the member for Richmond, secured, a very historic commitment to go to 20 billion a year R&D. And I think I heard today the government ring-fencing that. And I support the notion of an industrial strategy, as long as it's not earnest committees of Whitehall mandarins far away from the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the people out on the ground, and I support the Wealth Fund and the Mansion House reforms. But I have some serious concerns about the message today that today's budget sends about innovators, about entrepreneurs, about wealth creators, about businesses, about the people who turn great science into great businesses that drive growth. Let me just say then something about why the innovation economy is so key. It is the only bit of our economy, it's the only way, if we really want to get out of debt, it's the only model of growth that will deliver the productivity increases that we so urgently need, that will reduce our reliance on low-wage labour, which has been completely built into the service economy that's dominated this country since the 80s, through the years of Cool Britannia with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. It was a model based on letting London boom, pull in cheap labour, drive an immigration crisis that my party would then get itself twisted up about and put huge pressure on our public services. We have to get away from that model of growth to a model of growth led by innovation, with higher skilled jobs, much greater efficiency and productivity, sectors that are growing in this country that are attracting and could attract billions of investment all around the world. There is a wall of capital to invest in agri-tech, in clean tech, in fusion energy, in satellite manufacturing. I could go on in all of the sectors that we're so strong in. That's the bit of the economy that we should be focusing on. It's the only bit of the economy that also drives genuine regeneration. The really sustainable levelling up is happening in Glasgow now through the satellite manufacturing economy. It's happening in Edinburgh through quantum computing, in Newcastle through data, in Leeds through digital health, in Norwich through agri-tech. The R&D economy is the best mechanism for driving that levelling up, driving the regeneration and creating the opportunity society that we all need. You can't have an innovation economy without an opportunity society, and I'd go as far as to say you can't have an opportunity society without an innovation economy. So it is the key if we really want to tackle this problem. And we are... I'll happily give way.
Thank you very much to the Right Honourable Member for giving way. And does he agree with me that key to supporting the sort of economic growth he's talking about is also supporting skills and employment, and getting young people on a pathway where they can train and receive the skills that they need so that they can then secure the job at the end of that pathway is critical?
Yes, I completely agree. She makes a very important point. And when I was the Minister for this agenda, the science superpower piece is about us being a bigger player in the world, attracting billions in, and using our science and research to solve global challenges. That isn't yet what our science ecosystem is set up to do. It isn't even what it thinks it's there to do. And the innovation economy piece is precisely that. It's about turning that science engine into, through the catapult network, much greater industrial R&D, through the skills investment, making sure that we're training the workforce for tomorrow's industries, through using procurement and regulation in order to drive economic advantage here in this country and supporting those clusters. And those skills are completely key to it. So it's in that context that I want to suggest that this opportunity is the opportunity. The real challenge, and I think what the Chancellor has missed today, is that to drive the innovation economy, you need entrepreneurs, you need innovators, you need people who take a risk, people who will create a business. It doesn't happen in the Treasury. It doesn't happen, dare I say it, in my beloved old Department of DCIT. It doesn't happen here in Whitehall. Our job is to create the conditions for that to flourish. And I fear in today's budget, the signal that has gone out is that, yes, we've had a change of government, but we haven't had a change of the core narrative. It feels to me today as though Treasury orthodoxy has been reasserted. We're going to balance the books by cuts, by taxing existing wealth, chasing harder and harder growth down, inflation up, borrowing up, mortgages up, taxes up, rather than to send a big signal that this country is open for business. And the member opposite made an important and interesting point about the Global Investment Summit, which we set up now called the International Investment Summit. It is good news that that money is coming in. But I have to say, I have never in 30 years in the innovation economy seen more people decide more quickly that they're going to sell their business, get out, leave the country than in the last 3 or 4 months. The government, I think, thought they were playing a clever political trick of rolling the pitch so that the budget news wasn't as damaging, as politically damaging when the budget day came. But I think they've misunderstood how mobile capital and talent are in the global economy. We need people to come to this country, to want to. I didn't, but they often want to put their children into independent schools. They want to make money here. They want to build businesses here. We need to attract them. We have no right to just assume that they will come. So if we're going to build an innovation economy, we really need a tax regime that is fair. Yes, nobody wants this to be the home of Russian money laundering and international criminals and an abuse of the non-dom system. But we have to build an economy which is attractive for innovators. There's something else we need to do, is to connect the city better to our science, research, technology and innovation sector. It is shocking to me, and I think to this House it should be, that in 1997, to choose a date, 73% of the £3 trillion odd held in the city, our money, this country's money invested in pensions, 73% went into equities and 53% into UK equities. That figure today 53% is 4%. In fact, it's just under. We've seen in the last 25 years the most extraordinary globalisation, digitalisation and indexation of the city. The city hasn't been encouraged by successive governments and hasn't been itself investing actively in the productive businesses of this country. We've seen a hollowing out in the city of its commitment to support British industry and British companies. And it's an accelerating model in which, in the last 4 years, every month, we've seen a net outflow of investment in UK equities. So I hugely support the work that the fantastic Parliamentary Secretary at the Treasury is doing on taking forward our Mansion House reforms. We have got to connect our capital in the City of London better to our productive innovation economy. I'm not for a minute suggesting that everyone's pensions should go into one biotech company. Quite the opposite. But if we connect some of that money into our innovation economy, we will unlock tens of billions of private money, our money, to drive growth in this country, rather than what we do at the moment, which is incubate world-class businesses and then watch the Australian pension fund, the Canadian pension fund buy them out, or American investors buy them out and float them. And I really worry about today's inheritance tax and capital gains tax announcements. There'll be a lot of devil in the detail in the Red Book tomorrow, but if we kill the engine that drives the people who create the companies of tomorrow, we will end up with a big science investment and not enough actual innovation in the economy. Madam Deputy Speaker, I wanted to close by speaking briefly about the issues in rural Mid Norfolk. It's a rural, sparse, disconnected, something of a backwater in the middle of East Anglia with poor traditional access. I'm afraid today's budget is hitting the two key groups in my constituency. A lot of pensioners who've been hit on winter fuel, a huge damage to the small businesses on the high streets, the hospitality businesses, the pubs. They were looking for real relief today, not just a penny off beer duty, but real relief for businesses out in rural areas. And the agricultural property relief hit will really damage the rural economy of Mid Norfolk. I hope that when we read the Red Book, we will see some better news. But I fear today this has been a change of government, but all too little change in the economic orthodoxy. This country, like a company, is running out of cash, and we need to unlock new models of growth with a much more innovative and enterprising model of economic growth.
Dr. Jeevan Sander.